Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your hosts, Jake and Scott. Our livers are fresh. Our palates are fresher after we just spent a long weekend. It felt like a week at Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and we are excited to talk to you all things Kentucky Bourbon Festival and to get you ready for 2025. So sit back and buckle in to the latest episode of the Bourbon Lens. Scott, have you recovered yet from the week's festivities?
I think I finally have. I think I've got my energy levels back up. I'm well rested, slept good, didn't stay up too late, and drank lots of water.
There we go. The most important question is have you climbed out of the doghouse yet?
I'm still working on that one, but
all right.
we're heading in the right direction.
There we go. I've earned my keep, I think, a little bit. I've gotten good graces. Penelope was waking up really early, so I helped with her overnight the last 2 nights and rocked her back to sleep at 3 a.m. and 4 respectively. There was probably 10 loads of laundry that needed to be folded. I folded all of that. So, I'm slowly digging while I also prepare for her first birthday party this weekend. Big wild. 1-year-old.
That is crazy. Congrats on that.
Yeah. I was talking to Lauren last night while I was doing the laundry, and I was like, it's so nice this weekend for the first time in a while. There's nothing. Like, there's sporting events, there's like kids stuff, but they're like, we're at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no like anticipation. It's just we're at home.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's always nice to have a little break after the fun.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's you need a break from the fun. Yeah. The vacation after the vacation, as they say. But we do want to break down Kentucky Bourbon Festival for those who are listening and who will be going in 2025, because each year they get a little bit bigger, they get a little bit better, and there's great things to unpack. So the most important thing, and you've probably seen this floating around social media, pick your favorite influencer because they were all there. Bourbon Finds, Bruzel, Burb Your Enthusiasm, another bourbon guy, Heavy Bourbon, Bourbon and Smoke, Whiskey Nomad. I don't know. I just feel like I named all the popular ones. But don't forget the little people, like, our man John from Embellish Podcast, or Whiskey Weather, or some other people you may have heard of. Bourbon Lens was there, of course. And the new formation of our adopted Jake, Bourbon's Lens, is also available. Yeah. You can find that streaming nowhere because we'll never do a podcast with that Canadian. But anywho, the question is, what were your favorite pours that you had from last weekend? Well, it doesn't have to be your top, top 3 or any particular order, but you'll go, I go, and people get a flavor for what kind of whiskeys we were able to taste last week at Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
Yeah. Well, first off, the fact that there were 62 distilleries at the Bourbon Festival, clearly we did not try everything. Clearly we did not try close to everything. I mean, there's just so many options. It was like, how do I get to what I want to see? So I think that like prioritizing the brands that you really love or that you want to, experience for the first time is very important. That said, one of my favorites of the weekend was Michter's new Toasted Barrel bourbon. Toasted Barrel rye has a special place in my heart. Kind of early in this podcast, it was what kind of like opened my eyes to whiskey. More like appreciating whiskey for, the different elements, but Toasted Barrel bourbon this year is absolutely excellent. One of the pours that I had was poured by Andrea herself. So that also is a great, she's the one that helps put that in a bottle every year. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Andrea's great. And she elevates the experience because she will tell you a little bit about it. She'll talk about it and give you the nuances of the bourbon that goes in that glass, which I thought it was a great whiskey too. I got to try it 2 different days. I tried it in the VIP tent, and I tried it in the media tent when she was in there as well. So I agree it was a solid pour. I'm going to go to a heritage brand that sits right there in Bardstown. You could probably throw a rock and hit it at the distillery from the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. I'm going to go 1792 12 year. First time I've actually ever had that bourbon. And it was kind of one of those things that we got in Saturday right at noon. The 1792 line had been forever long the day before, and even at Bourbon in the Air on Thursday. I saw Ross Cornelison, the master distiller, over there, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go talk to Ross, and I'm going to go have a pour. And the 12-year stood out. I mean, it's a really, really phenomenal bourbon. That should be an affordable MSRP if you can find it on shelf. Even at Kroger, I think the last time it was out, it was like $95.
I don't even think it's anywhere near that. I think it's like 50 or 60.
It's wild.
Like, I think it's ridiculously cheap for what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's super solid. And I really enjoyed that pour and having the conversation with the master distiller, which Ross will be coming on here soon. So we've already started the wheels turning on that. So if you're a 1792 fan, be on the lookout for that podcast dropping sometime later in 2024 or early in 2025. So heading back to you, let's think maybe a little craft. So we went some big boys there on the first time, like the first half of this answer. Craft. Any craft distillers kind of stick out from a pour for your perspective?
Yeah, maybe not craft distillery, but producer, non-distilling producer. But Chase over at Nulu brought essentially a triple oaked finished bourbon. So the way he described it to me was, it was a straight bourbon whiskey finished in a double oak cask for 1.5 years. So you're already getting extra extraction, extra wood, and then the Cooper partner that he's working with, and I cannot remember the name. It was not one that I recognized. So maybe a smaller guy, but they did a maple cask and they did it brulee style, which I think just means like burn. So they charred the inside of the cask with the maple syrup remnants in it. So you're getting a lot of burnt sugars. And I mean, it's just a wild, like, I've never heard of this. Now, recently heard of it for a second time from another NDP, but maybe that's something people start to see some variations on finishes or barrel, different barrel alterations.
Yeah.
But that one was it wasn't overly maple either. And that was kind of the nice part. It just had like a more like campfire, roasty, sweet, like undertones that kind of carried through it.
Yeah. No, it got a lot of love. I had to laugh. Jason from Bourbon and Smoke had a whole group of people do a Baby Glen review, and they walked through the maple brulee. Chase also had an honorable mention for the Burn Your Face Off Award in a single barrel 140 proof bourbon that we tried early on. That will get the party started. And Chase is a good guy. He finds a lot of cool barrels and does a lot of unique things. So if you've not tried Nulu, definitely keep up with what they're doing. There's plenty of people that have done picks, but their standard offerings are typically really solid. So do that, and also pay attention to his bottled and bond collection that they've put out, the Hallsbaker or Hallsbacker. I don't know actually how to say his last name, but it's really interesting what they're doing there. I'm going to go to another craft distiller for me. I really enjoyed now in Midway, formerly in Lexington, went over to Bluegrass Distillers. Shout out to Tim Nettle for really getting us in there and helping understand a little bit more about Bluegrass Distillers. But their Blue Corn single barrel cask I was bringing everybody. I was like, you got to get the Blue Corn. They're like, why? And I'm like, just trust me. It's unique. It gives you that tortilla chip feeling, but it was also like sweet and it was just big and bold. I think it was like 126.2, which, you know me, it's not typically a warm bourbon drinker, but everyone I brought over there really enjoyed it. I was one of the ones that kind of stood out to me.
I did not have that one, so I can't comment on it, but Bluegrass Distillers is certainly one of the more unique craft distillers in Kentucky. They use blue corn. I mean, that's just wild in and of itself. Which I've had the standard offering, which is, I believe at the time it was a bottled and bond. It might be 100 proof, but it had a lot of body. So I can only imagine like what the cast strength single barrel nature would be.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. And one of the other things I found to be really interesting was the experiential part of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival this year. It felt like it was all old friends that had got to come together or people you've met online And one of the things that we got to do, one of our longest standing kind of friends in the bourbon community, Steve Berman, came back from Canada to enjoy the Kentucky Bourbon Festival with a variety of folks. And, you know, from a story perspective, I think it's best told from your angle, because I walked away to go try the 1792, and you influenced Mr. Berman into a line. And what line did you influence him into there, Scott?
Yeah, so I think I played like ultimate influencer, live action influencer, not so much social media influencer, which always seems to get a negative connotation. But we walked in, it was super early on Saturday. Came across Steve, we were talking. He's like, there's only one bottle I want to try. There's only one whiskey I want to try. And I was like, well, what is it? And he's like, oh, it's the brown wax he said, oh, it's the brown wax Booker's. He's like, they only reserve the brown wax for the specialist, the most special releases of Booker's. I was like, well, let's go try to find it. So we walk up to the sampling bar, we ask, and they're like, no, we, kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Can we get a sample? Didn't work. So I was like, Steve, there's bottles back there, like behind, whatever their bar was. And I was like, let's just get in line. He's like, well, I don't really know. I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can
get it back to Canada is what he said.
Yeah. I don't know if I can buy it and then not get it back to Canada. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize all that was an issue. I was like, well, let's just hop in line and think about it. Right. So I was like trying to be like the devil or the angel on the shoulder and be like, let's just hop in line and think about it. We got some time. There's like 15, 20 people in line. Only saw I think it was like 6 or 8 bottles behind there. I don't know if they had more, but
no one was buying it though. That was the most interesting thing. So I stood, as you were influencing, I came back out of the tent and I caught up with you all, and I literally watched it unfold as nothing from the Booker's, the reserve, was being plucked off. It was just all overlooked. 18-year Knob Creek. It was the Little Book or Baker's 13. And I was like, it's $135. What are we doing here, people?
Yeah. I mean, Booker's standard offerings are now, I think, $199.
Yeah.
So I was like, we're going to stand here in line and we're going to figure this out. So we finally convinced him by way of, we'll just buy it, right?
Yeah.
we'll just buy it and then we'll get to try it. And if you don't get to take it back to Canada, then no harm, no foul. But you got to try it, right? So that's what we did. So that was probably like the highlight of my Saturday. Maybe the highlight of the weekend was just convincing somebody to do something that they really wanted to do and I kind of had second thoughts about.
Yeah, no, it was great. And it was the experience part of it all, because we got to share that whiskey with, I don't know, 30, 40 people, like in the Weagland Karens. And it was really cool. Just everyone was like, man, that's really good. Man, that's really good. It's a blend of 8 to 14-year-old bourbon from Jim Beam. And like, it's top notch. If you can find that out in the wild, like, and we've had Baker's 13, we've had Knob 18 recently. Like, I think that was by far and the way, like, the best thing I've had from Jim Beam, other than that 20-year-old bourbon that they released for Bardstown Collection. It's one of the best things I've ever had from them.
Yeah. I mean, just that's another perk of the weekend is a lot of the times when you get to hang out with the people that are purchasing the bottles, people like to purchase different things, go back to the hotel, go back to the house, in our case, Airbnb, and everybody's cracking what they just bought.
Yep.
It's like, hey, try this because I want you to try this, or I want you to, so it's like there's even more of that beyond the festival. That's probably one of the coolest features.
Well, 100%. And that gets us into, experiential things to do or to get ready for. So were there any brands, activations or booths or things that they did from a dinner or anything that really stood out to you that you're like, hey, you got to make sure you're checking out X next year?
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of surprised me, and maybe I just overlooked it in some of the press materials and the pre-festival events, was the Angel's Envy Cigar Lounge.
Mm-hmm.
They mentioned that it was going to be a double-decker cigar lounge with private areas for smoking. But I thought that was really cool because it was like a separate area, allows you to get away above the festival because it was on the second floor. They had, lounges, high top tables. They had a bar up there. I think there was a giveaway of some cigar accessories and things like that. So that was really cool. And you could just reserve a time if you needed to, like have a extra private area, like with leather couches and stuff. So I thought that was super cool. Angel's Envy, they had a cocktail. They had pours of their, I believe it was just their
standard ruby port.
Yeah, their standard port finished. So I thought that was really cool. Really just took you to purchase a cigar at the festival, which, I mean, that was kind of one of the best things was bourbon and cigars this weekend too. Yeah.
No, I agree. I thought that was a really cool activation. I'm going to go to a brand that we're going to be talking to next week. A little sneak peek here is I'm going to go to Old Forester. It was hard to see the line and everything kind of unfold. But once you knew that there was a bottle purchasing line and then there was a pour line, you could skirt on right up there and you were able to try some of their most rare bourbons. They had Presidential I think it's called Presidential, out for people to try. They had birthday bourbon for people to try. Like they had a variety of really rare pours from them. And for an activation to me, them and 1792 really kind of took the cake on that, like having a full lineup of their more mature or hard to find casks available. So those two activations really stood out. And I was so happy to see brands not just pour their standard offerings, but to pour something special for these 7,000 people per day coming to the Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great tip too, was like, it was a little overwhelming at times with the lines, you know, when they had special releases at the tents.
Yep.
It just kind of got blurred. I walked through the middle section at one point and I was like, there are two huge lines. What are these lines for? And I just went up and asked somebody, I was like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
And the one was Old Forester. The other one was Michter's 10 bourbon.
Yep.
And they just so happened to be released at the same time. And I was like, poor planning, but you know, whatever. But again, if you knew you could just walk around to the side, you're going to get a pour of one of those or something else, you know, like Michter's toasted bourbon just by walking around. If you're not interested in buying a bottle or waiting an hour or two, I guess, I don't know how long they were, but
Michter's was 2 hours. The Michter's line was 2 hours.
Yeah, that's right. So that's a hot tip. That's a good one for next year.
The other one that stood out, you know, and you mentioned this, like in our pre-meeting, was Green River. I felt like it was really inviting. I thought they had a really nice space that you can put multiple people under the tent. Some of the tents are smaller, so you can't really get underneath them. Green River, I felt like was one that you came into, right? Like you felt welcomed in that. So I thought that was a really good one. And, you know, Green River is a brand that's growing, and they're making sure that consumers, amongst all the rare whiskey that was there, that they're stood out. You know, their standard offerings, their single barrel, their wheated bourbon, their rye whiskey, and their regular, you know, bourbon. I thought it was a really good tent that they put together from the team at Green River and Bardstown Bourbon Company.
That's a good point, because, you know, sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm just walking up, grabbing a sample and walking away. But that's really not what the festival is about. It's about the experience, talking to the people that make it, talking to the people that sell it, talking to the people that are the brand.
Yeah.
You know, so I think Green River does an excellent job of that. New Riff did a really good job of that. Fortunately, they were right next to each other.
Yeah, I know. You could go one to the other. And you know, if you didn't catch New Riff, you know, you know, sad, because we launched our podcast with them last week, and people could have learned a lot about them going into the festival.
Yeah, and tasted almost all the whiskeys we tried on the podcast.
Yeah, it was pretty much verbatim.
Yeah, which
was pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think, you know, talking to the brands, if brands are listening to this, I think making your tent or your activation as accessible as possible, as inviting as possible, avoiding the long lines that aren't really necessary, you know, getting out and hitting the pavement and actually talking to the people outside of the bar, you know, around the front of the bar. You know, they have the game at Green River with the coin and the bottle, whatever that's called, like skee ball type of, you know, game.
Yeah. Shoot, me and my wife play it when we get the Green River bottles out. She loves to flick the coins down.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder than you think it is.
Yeah, it's pretty tough game.
Yep. A lot of variables
you
there.
Play for money.
No, God, no. I'd lose money. Just like we played one hand of poker for $20 and we all lost $20, a freaking dusty ball. But that's neither here nor there. That gets me into the most important thing. I think as seasoned Kentucky Bourbon Festival goers that we are at this point, the most important upgrade we had this year, and which will prepare you for 2025, is book your place to stay now.
Yeah.
Because they are going to go like that. And we're already getting the band back together. Kentucky Bourbon Festival 2025, Bourbon Lynn's house, along with some great people. But that was the festival was great, but that was the highlight of getting to do this with a group of guys. Like a group of people who were all similarly interested. You talked about getting to try some of those bottles back. You know, one of our good friends, Dan, bought an 18-year-old Heaven Hill and cracked it. And we got to try it. Like, those are the memories that I'll never forget about this weekend in particular.
Yeah. I think that just having the convenience of a place nearby, not having to stay in Louisville, which, yeah, that's nice because there are still things to do in Louisville during KBF week, but like just being able to walk home or get a cab or an Uber, definitely the highlight than, how we've done it in the past, which is just not convenient. So
no. Nor is it safe.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Hot tip, book a place now, September 5th through the 7th, 2025. Maybe book it like the 3rd through the 7th. Give yourself a little bit of time. We were talking about, what are our tips? That's tip 1. Book now, September 5th through the 7th. That's when the festival is. If you're feeling froggy, get that VIP ticket for Bourbon in the Air. If you're feeling really good, it's also the week of Labor Day. Drive down on Monday. Enjoy Kentucky Tuesday, Wednesday. See if you can get a ticket to the Bourbon Hall of Fame that might happen that day. Enjoy everything that bourbon has to offer the week of Kentucky Bourbon Festival, because there's a lot to do and brands are picking up the activations throughout the week. Scott, you mentioned one of your favorite ones on the pre-show. I'll let you talk a little bit about what happened Thursday night at one of your favorite places to go have some food. Yeah, like Jim Beam had the supper club on Thursday night. Now, I didn't go to it this time, but I mean, that's an incredible event that they coordinated with the Bourbon Festival. It's like, in addition to what you can do in Bardstown and all the events there, go to another distillery where they've got dinners and distiller dinners, I think is what they call them.
Yep.
Where you get to sit down with the distillers at the individual locations. So yeah, it's more than just Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, for sure.
Plan the week.
Yeah.
Plan the week. There will always be something for you to do. If there's not, just ask somebody what's going on in the next evening, or what's going on tomorrow or today. There's something going on. They'll
point you in the right direction. Tip 2, which I think is the most important tip. You're going to go to your computer or to your phone, and you're going to go to kybourbonfest.com, and you're going to sign up for their newsletter. Why? Because VIP sells out in a matter of moments. So if you want those VIP tickets, you better be subscribed to the Kentucky Bourbon Fest newsletter. It is the best way to stay connected to what's happening. I can't stress that one enough.
Yeah. And I mean, not to be an anti-salesperson, but you don't necessarily need the VIP if you can't swing it or whatever, but you're going to have a good experience no matter which package you choose. But don't wait to buy your tickets, because there's no telling how many tickets will be available, how big the festival will get next year, if it'll get bigger, because there was, what did I say, 62 distilleries, I think was what my note said. Like 6,200 people over the weekend. So it might not get much bigger. So it's going to go quick.
Yeah. And people are going to get that experience, and more people are coming from out of Kentucky than ever before. I think Cordell, who is the chairman of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival with Eastern Light Distilling, Cordell said that something like 80% of people came from outside of Kentucky to this. So while it's Kentucky bourbon for the world, and about, the spirit here, less and less Kentuckians are getting the opportunity because people from around the world want to come to this weekend. So book now. It's sold out the last 2 years. You don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
And third, I think, and most importantly, it does cost money this weekend. There are things that you're going to do that it costs money, whether that's buying groceries for your Airbnb, which is a smart move, and having snacks and maybe some frozen pizzas or 10, or making sure you have a grill and you go through 6 pounds of hamburger. There's a lot of opportunities there you could to do that. But setting a budget, I think, would be the third tip. You can blow through a lot of money really quickly, especially if you come in the week before. So set a budget, because there's going to be some really cool bottles that you have to offer. And Scott and I, as bourbon shows up at the house, we have to be very particular about our budgets, because if we spend too much money, the wives probably will give us a little bit of the.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't set a budget, maybe money's no option for you, but if you don't set a budget, you're going to come out hurting, because there's a lot that you're going to get to try, that you're going to have access to, that you're going to be able to buy. Not to mention 40 or 50 single barrels this year. From all the distilleries. So it's like, you're gonna have options.
Yeah.
Even if you just buy a standard bottle that you don't have in whatever state. You know, I heard that a lot. Like, oh, we don't get this in Ohio. We don't get this in California. We don't get,
Yeah.
But you can come here and taste it, try it, buy it, take it home.
Yeah. So here's to this. We're going to see you in 2025, first week of September. Make sure you let Scott and I know that you're going to be there. We'd love to connect with you. Don't miss the opportunity to get one-on-one with distillers, with the bourbon community. Some of the biggest people and biggest brands and biggest names show up for this event. And I cannot stress enough how much fun it is. Sleep a little bit beforehand and drink plenty of water, because you're going to need it. But it's something that you're not going to want to miss in 2025. Scott, anything else you would leave anyone with before we close this episode down for the day?
I think just make plans. Just do it. You probably heard a lot about it this year, because there's a lot of social media people that were there. I mean, we ran into most all of them. So you've probably heard about it. So just book it, right? Just block your calendar out at work. Talk to your spouse. Invite your spouse. That would be good too. Talk to the grandparents. Get a babysitter.
Yep.
And just come. I'm like, get here.
Just
like we're fortunate.
Get to Bardstown.
Yeah, we're very fortunate because we're not too far.
No,
but we tried to immerse ourselves, even being 45 minutes away. Like, we just got a hotel or an Airbnb, so we just got there and spent the weekend.
Yeah, be present. Like anything you do in life, just be present. If the more present you are, the more fun you're going to have. I could count on my hand how many times I was probably picking my phone up throughout the day, unless it was to text the house, like, where are we? Where are we meeting? What are we doing next? So, enjoy Kentucky Bourbon Festival 2025. It's going to be here before you know it. It's less than 365 days away, because it's going to be at the beginning of the month. So make sure you're ready for Kentucky Bourbon Festival 2025. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of The Bourbon Lens. We greatly appreciate it. We want to give a special shout out to Estes PR and the Kentucky Bourbon Festival for allowing us to come and be part of the media. And it wouldn't be without them and their hard work that they did to dedicate all of the work and all the opportunities for us to talk to brands and engage with all of the whiskey in the community that are there. So again, huge shout out to Kentucky Bourbon Festival, Randy Prossi, Stacy, and the and the rest of the team, and Estes PR for coordinating all the media. So we really appreciate it. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bourbon Lens. Make sure you're connected with Scott and I via social media on Instagram, X, and Facebook. We'd love to connect. And if you're more the professional type, follow us over on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about Bourbon Lens, make sure you're subscribed to our weekly newsletter, The Weekly Pour. For exclusive content and more, check out Patreon. Follow us there at Bourbon Lens. And last but not least, on your favorite podcast listening app, make sure you're subscribed, because every Monday, Scott and I release a podcast, and we would love to have you here listening to the newest features and the newest whiskey news. And until next time, cheers.